Hey everybody, welcome back. I decided that I'm going to go ahead and create this bonus video because I want you to see some of the things that I taught you inside of this free class, what it would look like in a no-code, low-code platform, and kind of how all of this might come together for you using an app solution. So one of the items, or rather one of the platforms that I didn't mention that I'm going to display here is called AppSheet. Now, AppSheet is a great program for low-code, no-code, and it was originally its own company, and then Google bought it out. So Google now is AppSheet. And so if you don't want to do that, then I would suggest possibly Microsoft. And again, Microsoft Power Platform is pretty good. That's my go-to type of platform. But in any event, I wanted to use the AppSheet because I haven't used this in a while, and I wanted to come back and kind of revisit it, and I thought maybe this would be a good little platform to learn. By no means are they sponsoring me. I just picked this because you can start for free, and it gives you a free platform to play around with, and maybe you can kind of go along with some of the things that I did here. And it'll give you some, an opportunity to kick the tires and get the most value out of this free course. All right, so to begin, what you're going to do is you're going to log in, and after you've gone ahead and you logged in, what you want to do is you go over to My Apps. Essentially, what it'll do is it'll kick you over here to begin with anyway. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start an app with my own data. Now, before I go here, what I want to do is I want to show you my Google Drive. Inside of my Drive, I created a folder called AppSheet, and inside of that, I created a Google Sheet, and I called it My CRM. So if I, click into it, I should be able to open up this sheet. I don't know why it's not opening up. Okay, there we go. So we've got some of the things that we kind of saw in the class already. So I've got a full name column, and I have a first name and a last name column, but I'm going to leave it blank, okay? And what I've done is populated some random dummy data, and I've picked some pictures of, from randomlists.com that generates the random data, which is essentially where I got all this data. I guess a free plug for them, right? It's a free website. And in any event, I grabbed some popular celebrities, right? So these names obviously do not match the celebrities' pictures that you're going to see in the app. So in any event, I've got this sample data Google Sheet here ready to go. And so this is what I'm going to use to build my app. So I'm going to start with my own data. And I'm going to call the new app My New App to keep it, really stupid simple. And I'm going to say the category is a kind of a sales and CRM thingy. And now I need to choose my data. I'm going to click that link. So now I've got to go into the App Sheet folder, and I'm going to pick the My CRM sheet that I just showed you. And now magic is going to happen, guys. It's going to write the application for you. You don't have to do pretty much anything to make an app. You just have to go in and kind of fix what the AI screwed up because it's going to get some things wrong, okay? So, and that's fine. And as we can see, yep, there are definitely some things that are wrong here. And so let's go ahead and change this layout. So right now it drops you immediately into the data tab. And what we want to do is go into the user interface or the user experience. But you can see all of the names of my columns are in here, and it added some computed address and some computed names and some other stuff, right? So this is stuff that it created on its own. But in any event, what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the user experience or UX, okay? And we see that this is what drives our app. Now, they have a concept called a view. In the Power Platform, in Canvas apps, they call it a screen. So, again, each platform has its own nomenclature, its own nuances, and so screens or views, they're pretty much all relatively the same. So in this example, what we have is two screens or two views, one for context, which is the list of data, and then of course we have a map screen because we had an address. So each one of the addresses in my database shows up as a pincushion, which is really, really cool. And there's so many cool things on here too, because think about a customer app or a contract app where you need to get a customer signature. You bring your phone, you do everything on your phone. And, you just have a spreadsheet that's really your real database, right? But you use something like this low-code, no-code platform, and you can have them sign stuff on your phone. It's really, really neat. And In any event, so let's kind of jump into this a little bit more and see how we can change some of this stuff that it got wrong. So it's using a map location for the picture. I want the picture of the people, and I want the first name to show up, and I want the email. Anyway, these are the types of views that we can get. So we can choose between calendar, there's this deck. You can go through and play with all of these, all right? But for this intent and purposes, I'm just going to leave it back to card. And it's not going back to the same type of card. So this is the top part kind of describes the type of view that you want, right? And then there's some centering and some positioning and things of that nature. And this is where you choose the data. Right now it's using the contacts sheet, which is all I have. If I had a spreadsheet with multiple tabs, you could have, used the drop down and you could have picked another tab in that Google Sheet. And so here's some sorting options. Here's some grouping options. Now we've got to the layout, right? So the default layout as it was is this list item. So I'm going to change this back to here. So the title, I wanted that to be the full name. So it's chosen first name, which is blank. Let's do full name. Okay. And now for the subtitle, let's make that the phone number. And we can pick the phone number there. Awesome. So now all we got to do is click on this guy to get to the picture. No picture. So there's a problem. The way that AppSheet works is it uses specific data fields as it's related to what it is that you're trying to do. So I'm trying to do something with an image, right? Which means that the data of type needs to be of image, an image data type. Remember data types? We talked about data types. So I'm not seeing my image here. So let's go back over to the database. And let's go take a peek at the columns. And so let's go into the contacts table. And now let's go into the view the columns. And let's go down where we got the image URL, right? And see where it says type? Type means data type, okay? And so the type is URL. It's not image, it's URL. So essentially, I could use it in the context of maybe needing it for a hyperlink or to use a link. But that's not how I want to use it here. I want to use it as an image because the URL is actually a direct link to the picture. So if I were to click on this in a browser and go into it, I'm going to get a picture of Steve Jobs. And so I want to treat this URL actually as an image because I want it to fuel into there. And the way to do that, all I do is change the data type to image. And so here's image up here. I've got my image data type. Now let's make a save so that the app updates. Let's swing on back over to the UX. Let's go back down here to this thumbnail. And now we see image URL, which was the name of the column, right? Called image URL. If I just called it image, it would have maybe just picked up that. So in any event, let's just pick image URL and bada bing, bada boom. Look at that. Now we've got some pictures here, which is pretty cool, right? So let's go ahead and make that save. So all of this is well and good. And now essentially we have an app. So we've already learned about data types, so that's starting to come together. Let's go in a little bit deeper and let's go drill into this, right? So here we got Bob Jones. And if we look at this, we got the full name, the street, the city, the zip, blah, 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 right? Everything's there. If we go ahead and edit, here's the first name, but it's blank. Well, you know what? We learned about programming, and I told you towards the end that under the advanced functions, that this is essentially the power in the low-code, no-code platform. So what we can do here is write a formula or use some functions to kind of have the end user experience be when they add the full name to go ahead and automatically, why not fill out the first and the last name for them? There's no reason to have them, fill in 3 pieces of information because we've got the technology. We're smart now, right? We know how to do these types of things. So let's just give the end user the best user experience possible. So to do that, let's write a formula. So let's swing on back over to the data. Let's go into the columns. And we'll notice that there's a formula item here. And so if we click into the first name field, now we get this expression assistant window. And remember I told you types of data types again? So here we got some yes, no. Here's some mathematical functions. And this is why you keep hearing citizen developers can be a low-code, no-code developer if they know how to use PowerPoint And the PowerPoint aspect is because it's visual. And so if you can create something that's sexy and pretty and looks nice, and you can use Excel formulas, which is what we're looking at essentially here, because a lot of these functions that you're seeing are in Excel. They're in spreadsheets. If I pop back over to here and went to the first name, for example, if I put in equal and I typed in left, which is a left function, it'll give me a substring from the beginning of a specified string. So if I go left and I say A2, which is column A, row 2, and let's just say I want to go out 4 characters and then hit enter, boom, I get Bob with this formula because I don't need 4 characters. I probably could have gotten away with 3, so let's do 3, right? So I can do that in the spreadsheet. So you might be inclined to say, yeah, I can go ahead and make this happen here. And that's all well and good for importing or fixing data that you might import, right? You can massage that in the spreadsheet and use the formulas there. However, we want to use formulas like this in the app. And let's have the app handle this for us, which will also make it when they're creating a new record that they won't have to go ahead and fill that data out. So let's hop back over into the app. Let's go look, and again, we're looking for the first name column. And so what we want to do is go into the text, and we want to look for that left function. Now, we could use split. You would think you could use split, but the problem here is that when you use split, the output, it's going to return 2 values. It's going to return both the first name and the last name, but we're in the first name column, so we want to extract out just the first name. So split's not going to work here. So what we do want to use is left, right? And so we want to take left from the full name, and we want to go out a certain number of characters. And in order to find the certain number of characters, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to use another function called find, which is down here. And what we want to do is we want to find that space that exists in the full name field. And that's going to return an integer. See, right here, result is a number. It's going to return an integer. So what we can do is use the left function for the first name, and we're going to go out the number of characters to where the space is. So we're going to have to use 2 functions to pull this off. Now I've already gone ahead and created the formula for you, and this is what it looks like. And so let's essentially break this down. Let's remove this last part. So the left function wants to know, okay, where am I going to look to grab the left part of this field? And so that's what that is. And then what we need to do is say, all right, now what we need to do, because now we put in a comma, so this is the second part. And the first part and the second part, and when you look down here for left or len, see it says text value, comma, number of characters, and that's it. So there's 2 pieces of information. Those are the parameters that we talked about early on. And so you're going to use those parameters here. We're going to use those 2 parameters, which is going to be the full name column. And then what we're going to do is add this other function as a parameter, okay? And so remember that JSON thing that we went through, that we're a key value of the value of the key value pair? The value can be a single value, or it can actually be a full-on dictionary or an array called an object. And so here we're actually not providing a value, we're providing another function. So this is how we put functions inside of functions, or nested functions, you may hear it. But in any event, that's what this formula is, and this is what the formula does. So break each and every little piece down. And again, functions do one specific thing. So this is just going to get the left information. This is going to do a find function on it. And so each of these work together to do one thing extremely well. And when you put them together, you can get some pretty powerful things to happen. And so if we jump back into here one more time, if we click on test, we can actually kind of see what the results are going to look like here. So here's the result of our function, right? Expression result. This is the column. And here's the actual full name column. It's pulling out Bob. So this is great. It's doing exactly what we want it to do. Now, before we jump back fully out of this, I want to show you this one part that I did, which is -1. The reason I use -1 is this. I'm saying go up to the find where the space is, right? And so we've got, let's just type this in here, DAVETEST. So if I count this out, I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So essentially, character number 5 is the space. but really all I want is the character for Dave. So I need to take the number of the space and back it off. That's why I did -1, because I don't want to count the space. I want everything before the space. Okay, so that's the purpose for the -1. It's saying find the space, and then I want you to go back one character. That way we don't have any extra padding at the end, like a space at the end of the first name when we're done extracting it. So that was the reason for, again, -1. Okay, so that's looking good there. Now let's do the last. This one is a little bit trickier because we have to use 3 functions to get it all to work together. And so again, back under string functions, we're going to this time, we're going to still use the find, right? Because we used that before. We still need to find the space. But we also need to use this other function called len. Len is going to give us the total number of characters in the entire full name column. And so then we're going to have to do some tricky math. The other thing too is that we're going to need to use, we don't need to do left, but we want to grab information out of the middle of the string, which is basically from the space all the way to the end. And in order to do that, there's a function called mid. And so we can grab information from the full name column, and then we're going to start from the space, but this time is we're going forward, not backwards. So now what we want to do is +1. We want to add an extra character, so we're going to do a +1 on that. And then we need to know the number of characters. And so to get the number of characters, we need to know the total length, and then what we need to do is back off the number that's returned, which is that find function that we did, and this time it's +1. So anyway, we're going to show you how this looks here. It's a lot longer. So here we got 3 parameters for the mid function, right? Because we need the text, the start position, and the number of characters. And so if we look at this, let's kind of break this apart out. And so here we go. This is the first parameter. Again, we're working with full name. And then if we go a little bit further on, now what we're saying is, once again, where are we starting? We're going to start at the space. But I didn't put the +1 here. I tacked it onto the third parameter. I says, now I want you to go ahead and go, and this is where essentially what is happening as I'm taking the full length of the full, all the characters that's in the full name column, and I'm minusing or backing out, again, using that find function, and that's where the backing out. This is the minus. I'm minusing that value, but then I'm also adding one more character so that I can go up to the space. I know this sounds probably crazy or whatever. Maybe it doesn't, because if you know Excel or you know Google Sheets and formulas, the mid function works identical in the spreadsheet just as it does here. So this is why they say low code, no code. If you can do formulas in Excel, you can do formulas in low code, no code. So just keep in mind the low code, no code is no harder than the spreadsheet, because this formula is the same formula that essentially you would need to use in the spreadsheet. Although, to be honest with you, I could cheat with this and I could simply use the split function and it would work absolutely perfectly good here. But in Excel, you would actually, Microsoft Excel, you would actually have to resort to this arcane way of doing it. I don't think the split function, I don't even know if it has a split function. I may have just misspoke. I'd have to go back into Excel to see what it is, just to be fair. So if I did misspeak, I do apologize. So going back into this, you've seen this before. We click on the test. Now what we want to do is make sure that the last name shows up. And we have no trailing spaces or no ending spaces. So we're getting Jones and Johnson and Rodriguez, everything that we expect. All right, so all of that complexity has now been baked into this guy. We're good to go. We're going to hit save. Now we go back over to the UI UX behavior. And if we go into Bob Jones, and let's go back out. Here, let me click here. Let me go to contact, start from the beginning. Let's go ahead and edit Mr. Jones. And now all of a sudden, look at that. Bob Jones exists, and Bob Jones is now filled out automatically for us, the first and the last name. But now if we kick over here to the spreadsheet where the data gets stored, there's nothing here. But once we hit save, it's going to go ahead and do that. And the reason that it's going in and now backfilling is as soon as I go in and edit the app, it's going to go ahead and update that data behind the scenes, which is really cool. And so that's pretty awesome. So now that information's there, it's done. And if I come back over here to the spreadsheet, boom, Bob Jones is there. If I go over to Shanika and do the same thing and I edit her record and I go into edit, see, the formula's already filled this out for me. There's nothing left to do except for save, and I'll kick back over here, and in a couple of seconds we'll see that data come through, and ba-boom, there we go. Now that's showing up there. So a couple things that's nice that happens. Now if we were to go ahead and create a brand new record, you know, we've got the full name here, but we don't have the first and or the last name. And so let's just throw some information out here, right? So now all of a sudden we've got the full name. Now all of a sudden we see the first and the last name, but it's grayed out. We don't actually have a way of editing it. But the nice part about it is the data that is back in the data set. It now includes all of that and breaks it out, but the end user experience is so nice because all they have to do is fill out one field as opposed to 3 fields. And as owners of the data, we get the benefit of having the data in multiple different ways. We get a full name, we get a first and a last name, so it's very easy to try to move data across into other systems as we need to sync that information across. So these are the types of things that you want to start thinking about, and this is how functions and formulas and things of that nature all come together in an application. Here's some behaviors, and we've got some automations here. So remember some of the logic that we talked about looping, and some of the logic that we talked about with regards to conditions or workflows or things of that nature. So if this happens, then do that. And if we click into this, you will see this, a new action. Here we give it a name, we tell it the table, and this is what we're saying. It said, do this type of action to perform. Well, here's what we can do. You know, data set the values to this column anyway. So here's all this information, and it's, you know, do this. And we're looking for a condition, so it's kind of a when, or if this is like this, then do something like that. And so this is where it is. Again, you don't have to code all of that crazy code stuff that you kind of saw me doing earlier in the presentation. It gives you a, you know, kind of walks you through step by step. But you need to understand the concepts or the conceptual portions of it. And that's why I did to put together, again, this free course so that you're at least familiar. And the benefit of that, too, is that if you want to go into write code and do developer type of things, you now feel comfortable, or should feel a little bit more comfortable than you did before you had viewed this free course. So lots and lots of information to learn. Again, I'm not promoting AppSheet. They're not sponsoring me, but it is free, so I encourage you to go use it just for that purpose alone. Go and play with something. You need to get your hands wet and dirty, or play with something. If your company has something, then use that. But anyway, I hope that this free course served you well. It was a pleasure creating it for you. And if you guys need any help at all with you know, hiring me to handle your projects or something of that nature, feel free, or I'm more than happy to, you know, kind of reach back out to you and kind of discuss your needs and see how I can help you solve some of those business problems. All right, well, that's it for this. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll see you in a future video. Bye-bye.